Hey guys, in today's video, we're going to be talking all about my brand new set of Vibrams, how barefoot shoes can help you with your lower back pain. Hopefully this is going to be a really helpful video and really practical and you take some of these tips away. Let us know in the comments as well if you've tried barefoot shoes. Did you like them? I know there are other brands like Vivo that are maybe a little bit more socially acceptable, but let us know in the comments if you've tried them and how you got on with them. So guys, there are going to be some timestamps underneath the video. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience and then we're going to get into some helpful stuff with your lower back in mind, how they can help your lower back, how not using barefoot shoes can influence your lower back in that negative manner. And hopefully by the end of this video, you're going to really have a better understanding about whether barefoot shoes are something you should try, and also a few little extras, accessories, if you will, that will help you if you are looking to start using barefoot shoes. So the very first time I started using these funny looking shoes was around, well, over 10 years ago now at university. Had a look at them, thought, oh, these look really interesting. And unfortunately, they were very difficult to buy at the time, which kind of explains a little bit later on why I stopped using them when mine worn out. But I always remember this experience of running for the bus the very first time I had them and the spring that was going through my foot. And we'll get into that a little bit more in today's video later on. But just the way the foot was working, the elasticity, the lack of impact, again, thinking lower back pain, it was just a really good experience. And then for the reasons that I just mentioned, I kind of stopped using them when I got into the working environment. When you're in clinical practice and dressed smart, suit, trousers, smart shoes, etc. I just kind of got out of the habit of using them and went back to ordinary trainers of variety, Nikes, Adidas, whatever it was, just normal looking trainers. So fast forward a good number of years, probably around about 2018, I remembered them for whatever reason and I got another pair. And at the time I was using, I think there were some Under Armour shoes, so nice and cushiony. I was doing my runs on the treadmill. I just started getting back into some cardio to complement the weightlifting that I was doing, and I was running 20 minutes on the treadmill and doing 10, 11, 12, 13 kilometers an hour, 14 kilometers an hour at the time. I got a pair of these shoes again, these Vibrams, and started running. And literally that first time, I think I was only running about 11 kilometers an hour. I thought I'd tone it down, get back into them gently. And within 90 seconds, both my calves had cramped up. I couldn't literally straighten my feet out properly. It was absolutely terrible. And it was, really tough to get those feet actually moving on the treadmill again. And long story short, I did manage to get back and complete the run, but it was just such an eye-opener, the damage, the degradation, the lack of care for all of those small muscles in my lower foot that I'd done over the past number of years, cramming them into these smart, acceptable shoes. And that's really what I wanted to explore with you guys on today's video, why that's happening and why maybe going back to them is actually a really good thing for our overall health, not just our foot health. So when we think about the shape of this shoe compared to your typical trainers or worse still, your smart shoes, and for ladies, high heels, even worse still, is that you're kind of cramming your foot into a little speedboat, if you will, when you're wearing those sorts of shoes, and it just crushes everything up. It stops the foot from moving. It means the only prime mover that we really have in our lower limb is going to be that calf, the gastrocnemius and the soleus muscle. All these other smaller muscles, of which there are many in the foot here and in the lower leg, just kind of get turned off. And when we think about lower back pain, when we think about how all of that works, it's a long chain of muscles that runs arguably from the top here all the way down our body into our feet. And those small muscles play a role. And when we're wearing these sort of traditional shoes, normal running trainers, etc., we are not benefiting from the real support, the dynamism that comes from the foot and all the small muscles down there. And also we're creating a weak link in the chain. And this is something that we're going to see later on in the video, has impacts on the way in which we are working from a lower limb point of view, and that knock-on effect up in the lower back, either before we have lower back pain or as a barrier to recovery when we have lower back pain. So the big thing about these is they allow your foot to splay out. You can see sort of the width of them here. And one of the common things that we see in traditional shoes is that toe starts to drive in and that just doesn't give you that connection with the ground. It doesn't give you that basing, it doesn't give you that sensory feedback that comes up through the sole of the shoe. And I will say from personal experience, the running that I mentioned earlier, running a reasonable amount, and I will say January 2021, in my old pair of these, I ran just over 100K. And the shoes are still wearing well. I mean, they've worn out now, but that was well over a year ago now, or 18 months ago that I did that. But they're still wearing, and interestingly enough, they seem to wear better than some of my other trainers, which are still running trainers, but have the thick soles. So how does this thing help lower back pain? How does going barefoot help you with your lower back pain? Well, the first and foremost thing is that it starts to get those lower leg muscles, those foot muscles, to engage, to provide stability with our feet. For many of us, we're going to be at work wearing those shoes, but then when we get home, we're going to maybe be barefoot, we're going to be in slippers, etc. And many of us, especially when we think about lower back pain, we have issues in the limbs, the knee, the hip, and the ankle. And therefore the fine control of our ankle, whichever way it goes, it's going to affect our reps. If you stand right now, you put your foot planted on the ground and you collapse your arch in. As you collapse your arch in, as you go from that position and you drive in that way, your knee rotates in. Your knee also goes towards the midline. It also gaps the knee, so it compresses the outside part of the knee and it stretches the inside of the knee. Many people with knee issues are going to have some of those foot issues, and by strengthening, providing strengthening support to these muscles by working them, you're able to start to provide more dynamic innate stability. The other option is you start looking down the route of providing arch support, etc. And that's using something passive to support your arches rather than using the muscles and the ligaments and the tendons that are inside here, not the shoe, but your own feet, to support that ankle. It's always better to have something in your body that's strong rather than rely on a support to do the job for you. When we think about the group of people that are most at risk of this being a serious problem for them, particularly thinking of lower back pain and foot health in general, you do think of ladies. Ladies in smart shoes, high heels, they've got the pointy toes, it just crams everything into this position. I will say, if you're someone in this category and you think, do you know what, my feet are going in a little bit at the ends, they're kind of looking more and more like those shoes, and you want to try something like these shoes, then do bear in mind there is going to be a little bit of a transition. And we've got a couple of tips a little bit later on to help you really make the transition into something like barefoot shoes and make them a little bit more part and parcel of your daily living, and get rid of some of those shoes and reserve them for special occasions. So if we go back to the muscular chain and how it affects your lower back, ultimately the lower back should be in a nice position. Our feet, our knees, our hips should all be in alignment. But as I mentioned earlier, as that foot rolls in, because we don't have appropriate arch support, our knee rolls in. That creates torsion, it creates a pull on all these muscles, and often it results in a little bit of a pitching forwards of the pelvis, which creates a little bit more strain in the lower section of the lumbar spine. What it does, if I show you on the spine, is it causes you to kind of pitch forwards a little bit here. This creates a little bit more shear at the level of the lumbosacral junction and is not particularly ideal for your lower back. So by squaring everything up, we can have a nice neutral lordosis without things being pitched forwards a little bit. And that comes from the ground up by having the ability to have your feet in a stable position and not have them collapsing inwards. Now, there are some caveats. Some people will have flat feet, and that's different, and that has implications for what we're saying in this particular video. But the easy way to figure out if that's you, your feet are naturally flat versus flattened when you stand on them because there's no support, there's no strength there, is just simply lift your foot off the ground. Lift the foot off the ground. If it has a nice smooth arch to it, and then that disappears, however small it may have been, then there's a good chance that you actually just have weak arches, you have weak support, and something like barefoot shoes with a little bit of rehabilitation work, with a little bit of conscientiousness, will help you start to strengthen your feet, which is going to strengthen the bottom part of that chain and allow it to build up the chain into your hamstrings, into your glutes, and into your lower back, keep everything nice and strong. If you are someone looking to start using barefoot shoes just like these, then we've got a couple of tips for you that will hopefully help you do so in a smoother transition. You don't need to be on the treadmill with your calves cramping up like crazy. There is a little bit more of a sensible way. And the good thing about the instructions, when you get the box, which is just there on the table, they'll actually give you some instructions and guidance on how you can get started. So that's really, really cool, especially with Vibrams anyway. So the very first thing is ease yourself into it. Make sure you start off, maybe even just walking around the house with bare feet. See how it feels. Have a look down at your feet. See how they feel when they're opened out. Do you have maybe any of those sort of bunions happening where the toes are diverting towards the outside rather than splaying out nicely like I showed you earlier? That's the very first thing. And grade that and see how it feels. Don't just get them and do like I did and go straight onto the treadmill and go for a run, especially if you're someone that's really used to and happy with using traditional shoes for your running, etc. Maybe use barefoot as a replacement for your slippers. That's a good one. And I would say using, thick socks that still have an effect of doing that isn't going to be quite the same as being literally barefoot on the ground. Number two, and we'll try and link to these in the description or a little card up here, is get some of these to try. I know they look a little bit weird and there's a picture just on the screen here, but they are toe separators. They're actually quite comfortable, especially if you're not used to having your toes splayed out and you think they're not quite as aligned as they could be. These little toe spacers, they're kind of like silicone or something like that. They work really well. I personally find them actually very, very comfortable to wear, and they just help keep those toes in the right sort of position. You don't want to overdo it, but like I mentioned earlier, if you're happy to try walking around the house without the shoes on to try and experience that barefootness a little bit more regularly and see if it's for you, wearing these is super easy to do, and you can do it for short stints as well, and they're so inexpensive. You can get a pair, try them, and then make the step maybe to going and getting the Vibrams themselves, because they come at a cost and are much more than these. I do think, ladies, for bunions, that's kind of part and parcel of using these sorts of shoes. These sorts of things can be helpful, but know that it is, when we've been wearing them for a little bit of time and they're spreading the toes out, it does feel, you know, different, let's say, rather than painful. It just feels a little bit different, but I do find them personally rather comfortable. Next tip is, if you're going to get your Vibrams or the ones like that which have the actual separators in them, get a pair of proper socks. These socks have the toes, okay? It's no good trying to contort your regular toes around them, and I certainly, from personal experience, back when I had my first pair, I would not be wearing them without socks. That is a bad idea. Get the socks. They also make it really, really comfortable, and I would get some good quality socks. I've tried the cheaper ones from Primark. They are not as nice at all, just for general comfort of your feet. So it is better to get a nicer pair of toe socks, or a couple of pairs, so you can interchange them when you're using them. So you might actually find that maybe getting the socks first and trying those in your regular shoes can also help, or wearing the socks around the house. That can be a good thing, because some people do find it a little bit weird having that material between the toes. That can be a little bit distracting. So try that again. It's just to try and give you guys some heads up before you go and buy the shoes, because they are going to be 80, 90 pounds to start with. So if you're in the US, they're going to be a little bit more expensive, or dollar amount's going to be a little bit different. So just have a think about that as a way of stepping into those sorts of barefoot shoes in a more gentle manner. The final tip is, when you do get your barefoot shoes, wear them when you're walking around. Wear them, you know, on a trip to the shops, little short stints, especially, again, in my mind, you might not have used these and you might have gone through maybe the last 20 years not using barefoot shoes. So when you do start using them, they are going to be a bit different. You're going to notice that the plantar fascia, maybe, that your Achilles tendon, those sorts of areas are starting to work in a different manner. And I would say, really, you know, work in concert, yes, with the barefoot shoes, but also with some element of strengthening and rehabilitation work, because that will help you get the most out of these shoes, and do so in a gentle manner. For example, one of the big problems that a lot of people have when they're around the house or not wearing shoes, and even when they are, unfortunately, it kind of, when it gets so bad, it kind of translates into, even when we're wearing shoes, these things happen, is that when we're doing a squat or when we're going upstairs, our arches are rolling in and our knees are buckling in. So if you're practicing things like lunges and squats in these shoes or barefoot, as Lara's done a number of times on some of the live workouts, you will see that your foot actually has to be more engaged. It has to be more active. Your lower leg might be a little bit more sore afterwards as well, some delayed onset muscle soreness, because those smaller muscles of the lower leg are actually working to maintain stability in the arches of the foot and in the foot in general. So by training alongside using the barefoot, you can get some easy stimulation of those muscles in a safer environment. Whereas if you did like I did and you go for a run in them, you're going to have to change the way in which you run. You're going to have to do a lot more of a forefoot striking. You cannot strike with your heel. That will create trouble. So a little final word of warning to those of you that want to do running in these sorts of shoes, you absolutely can. But if you are a seasoned runner, or you like doing that sort of activity and you're used to using nice cushiony shoes, you are going to have some real concerted effort, and maybe have a look at some other videos on YouTube online of people giving you tips on how to run effectively in these sorts of shoes as well, because it is a different strategy. It feels great from personal experience. There's so much less impact. So thinking about lower back pain as well, but you do need to learn there is a significant difference between the way in which we run in barefoot shoes and the way in which we run in traditional shoes with lots of cushion. So guys, let's round the video off. I know they do look a little bit strange, and Lara and I have had many a discussion on the visual appeal of these sorts of shoes, the social acceptableness of them. And you do have other brands. You have things like Vivo Barefoot, which they still look a bit peculiar because they're like a big paddle. But I do really think that the separation of the toes that you have here is a real winner, and it just really feels good to have your foot put into that natural position when you're out and about doing other sorts of things. There'll be a link in the description where you can see more. You can get these on Amazon. You can buy them directly from the website as well. Or there might be a little card up here as well where you can get yours if you are looking to get them. I will say there are a ton of variation, way more than when I first got them. There was just kind of 1 or 2 different styles of them, and you can get everything from sort of 70, 80 pound mark, like these ones that I've got, which do the job. Then you've got some more advanced ones. So if you are someone that kind of gets into these and you want to do things like trail running or other things, they've got a little bit thicker soles and lots of variety there, so you can check that out as well. So I do hope you found this video helpful. If you've tried them before, let us know in the comments. If you've got any questions about them, again, with back in mind, or maybe with some other conditions, knee issues, etc. in mind, then please do feel free to post in the comments, and consider giving this video a thumbs up to let us know if you do find this video helpful. And if you want more videos like this, thinking of the back in mind, what about X activity or product or whatever it is, let us know in the comments as well. We always try and gear these videos to make them as helpful as possible for you guys. And remember, you can always subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with the latest videos and the latest episode of the Back in Shape podcast. See you in the next video.